At the wedding reception, the millionaire spotted his pregnant ex-wife sobbing uncontrollably in a corner. What she revealed next shattered the celebration in seconds. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The coffee pot felt heavier than usual in Sofia Martinez's hands as she moved efficiently between tables in the elegant downtown Chicago restaurant. Her 22-year-old body ached from the double shift yesterday, but her face revealed nothing as she refilled cups for the table of executives deep in conversation about hotel acquisition strategies. "Another round of espressos for the Bennett Group," she murmured to herself, expertly balancing the tray while making herself nearly invisible. That was the trick to serving Chicago's financial elite. Be efficient enough to anticipate their needs, but forgettable enough that they spoke freely around you. Sofia approached the large corner table where Richard Bennett held court. At 31, the heir to the Bennett Hotel's empire commanded attention with his tailored suit and confident smile. 4 other executives hung on his every word as he gestured toward a spreadsheet. "The Rivera property is undervalued by at least 30%, Richard was saying. "If we move quickly, we can—" He paused as Sofia leaned between 2 men to refill their cups. Her eyes flickered briefly to the laptop screen where a financial projection was displayed. "Excuse me," she said softly, "but I think there's an error in your calculation." The table fell silent. Richard Bennett raised an eyebrow, more amused than offended. "I beg your pardon?" Sofia felt her cheeks warm but pointed to the screen. "The occupancy projection for Q3. You're using last year's tourism data, but the city's convention center expansion will increase business travel by at least 15%. Your projections are too conservative." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Richard Bennett laughed, not unkindly, but with genuine surprise. "And you know this because—" "Night school, business administration and technology at UIC, and I read." She straightened, clutching her tray. "I apologize for interrupting." As she turned to leave, Richard called after her. "What's your name?" "Sofia Martinez." "Well, Sofia Martinez, I think you just earned yourself a proper conversation. When do you finish today?" That conversation turned into dinner that same evening. Richard had waited for her shift to end, leaning against a sleek black Audi outside the restaurant. "I'm not dressed for anywhere nice," Sofia protested, gesturing at her sensible work clothes. Richard's eyes swept over her, taking in the simple white shirt and black pants. "You look perfect. Besides, I know a place where they care more about the conversation than the clothes." The place turned out to be a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a side street, family-owned and warm with the scent of garlic and fresh bread. Sofia stared at the array of silverware, momentarily overwhelmed. "Start from the outside and work your way in," Richard said quietly, noticing her hesitation. "That obvious, huh?" She smiled, no shame in her voice. "I usually eat dinner at the library between classes or standing over my kitchen sink." Honesty. Richard raised his glass. "Refreshing in my world." They talked for hours, about her immigration from Mexico as a child, her determination to get an education while supporting herself, her fascination with how technology could transform traditional industries. He seemed genuinely interested in her ideas about digital check-in systems and inventory management software for hotels. "Most of my colleagues are so stuck in their ways," Richard admitted. "They think luxury means traditional. I've been trying to convince the board that technology doesn't diminish exclusivity. It enhances it." "Your competitors will figure that out eventually," Sofia said. "The question is whether you'll be ahead of them or catching up." Richard studied her face. "You know, you don't talk like a waitress." "And what exactly does a waitress talk like?" she challenged, eyebrow raised. He laughed, conceding the point. "Touché. I just meant you have a mind for business." "I serve coffee to pay tuition. It's not who I am, it's what I do for now." That distinction seemed to fascinate him. By the time he drove her home to her tiny shared apartment in a working-class neighborhood, something had shifted between them. Standing at her door, he hesitated. "I'd like to see you again, Sophia. And not just to talk about hotel management systems." She looked up at him, this man from another world. "Why?" "Because you see things differently, and because you called me out on my spreadsheet without worrying about who I was." He touched her cheek lightly. "That's rare in my experience." 3 weeks later, Sophia found herself entering Richard's penthouse apartment on Lakeshore Drive for the first time. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of Lake Michigan that made her breath catch. "This is—" She trailed off, moving slowly toward the windows. "Just a place," Richard said, coming behind her with 2 glasses of wine. But it wasn't just a place to Sophia. It represented a world as distant from hers as the moon. The world of people who never checked price tags or calculated whether they could stretch their last $20 until payday. "My whole apartment would fit in your living room," she murmured. "Is that a problem?" He handed her a glass, standing close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. She turned to face him. "No, just a reality check." That night was their first together, the beginning of a romance that burned with unexpected intensity. Over the next months, Richard introduced Sophia to a life she'd only glimpsed from afar. Fine restaurants, exclusive clubs, weekend trips to nearby cities. Yet what drew her to him wasn't his wealth, but his vision. Despite his privileged upbringing, Richard dreamed of modernizing his family's traditional hotel business, of creating something uniquely his own. As winter settled over Chicago, their relationship deepened. Richard occasionally brought Sophia to business dinners, introducing her simply as, "My friend Sophia." Though the introduction stung slightly, she understood his world had expectations and timelines she couldn't fully comprehend. At one such dinner, Sophia found herself seated beside the skeptical CFO of a potential investment partner for Bennett Hotels. "Richard tells me you have ideas about technology integration," the older man said, clearly humoring her. "Actually, I've been developing a concept for personalized digital concierge services," Sophia replied, sketching her idea on a napkin as she spoke. By dessert, the man was asking for a formal presentation, and Richard was watching her with undisguised admiration. "You're going to be extraordinary someday," he told her later that night, as they walked along the lakefront despite the biting cold. "I already am," she answered with a smile. "You're just one of the few who noticed." Their relationship wasn't without complications. Richard frequently canceled plans for family obligations to which Sophia wasn't invited. When he introduced her to a Yale classmate as "my friend Sophia," she saw the man's knowing smirk and felt invisible in a way that burned. "Is that all I am? Your friend?" she asked later in the car. Richard sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "It's complicated, Sophia. My family has expectations. The board watches everything I do. I'm just trying to protect what we have from all that." "And what exactly do we have, Richard?" He pulled the car over and turned to her, his blue eyes intense in the dim light. "Something real. Something that matters. Isn't that enough for now?" Perhaps it should have been a warning, but in that moment, with snow falling softly outside the car windows and Chicago's skyline glittering in the distance, it felt like enough. One evening in early January, they lay tangled in the sheets of his king-sized bed, discussing the upcoming Bennett Hotels expansion into Asia. Sophia listened as Richard outlined his vision, occasionally offering suggestions that made him pause and reconsider approaches. "You know," he said, twirling a strand of her dark hair around his finger, "if you weren't serving coffee, you could be running your own tech company someday." "Who says I won't?" She smiled, tracing patterns on his chest. "My mother didn't cross the border carrying me so I could serve coffee forever." "I believe you." He kissed her forehead. "And when you do, I'll be your first investor. Promise?" She looked up at him, suddenly serious. "Promise." He pulled her closer. "One day, we'll go to Paris together. I'll show you the sunset from the Eiffel Tower. It's the most beautiful city in the world, and you deserve to see it." "Paris," she whispered, letting herself imagine it. "I'd like that." As Sophia drifted to sleep in Richard's arms that night, snowflakes swirling outside the windows of his luxury apartment, she allowed herself to believe in possibilities. A future where her intelligence and determination would lift her from serving coffee to creating something meaningful. Perhaps even a future with this complicated man who seemed to see her potential when others saw only a waitress. She had no way of knowing that in just 3 weeks she would discover news that would transform her dream into a nightmare, and eventually into a revenge served on a silver platter worth billions. The tiny plastic stick trembled in Sophia's hands as she stared at the 2 pink lines. Her breath caught in her throat, the small bathroom of her apartment suddenly feeling even more cramped than usual. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, the cold porcelain seeping through her thin pajama pants as reality sank in. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind, a whisper that gradually grew louder until it drowned out everything else. She and Richard had been careful. Mostly. There was that night after the charity gala when passion had overwhelmed precaution, and again during that weekend in Michigan when they'd gotten caught in a rainstorm and rushed back to their cabin, peeling off soaked clothes with urgent hands. 8 weeks, she whispered to her reflection, calculating backward. Maybe 9. For the next 3 weeks, Sophia carried her secret like a fragile bird, cupped protectively in her hands. During the day, she served coffee to Chicago's business elite with a practiced smile that revealed nothing. At night, she lay awake beside Richard in his luxurious bed, rehearsing words that stuck in her throat come morning. It wasn't fear of Richard's reaction that held her back, or so she told herself. It was the need to present this life-altering news properly, to create the perfect moment. January 23rd arrived with a bitter cold that penetrated even Richard's well-insulated penthouse. Sophia had asked for the evening off from both the restaurant and her night classes. She'd spent her last paycheck on ingredients for Richard's favorite meal, coq au vin, which she'd practiced making twice in her own tiny kitchen to ensure perfection. She arrived at his apartment at 4 in the afternoon, using the key he'd given her 2 months earlier. The spacious kitchen gleamed with rarely used professional appliances. Sophia moved methodically, chopping vegetables with precise strokes, marinating chicken, selecting the right wine, which she wouldn't drink tonight. By 7 o'clock, the apartment was transformed. She'd set the dining table with the fine china Richard kept for special occasions, arranged fresh flowers in the crystal vase his mother had given him for Christmas, and dimmed the lights to create an intimate atmosphere against the backdrop of Chicago's glittering skyline. Sophia changed into the one elegant dress she owned, a navy blue sheath that Richard had once said brought out the warmth in her eyes. She applied makeup carefully, hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. The certainty of finally sharing her secret brought a strange calm. At 7:45, she heard his key in the lock. "Something smells amazing," Richard called from the entryway. He appeared in the dining room doorway, briefcase still in hand, surprise evident on his face. "What's all this?" Sophia crossed the room to kiss him. "I wanted to do something special tonight." His eyes swept over the table setting, the candles, her dress. "Any particular occasion?" "Maybe." She smiled, taking his briefcase and setting it aside. "Go freshen up. Dinner's ready when you are." During the meal, Sophia barely tasted the food she'd spent hours preparing. Richard talked about his day, a promising negotiation with investors for the Asian expansion, a minor crisis with a property in Boston, office politics she normally found interesting but couldn't focus on tonight. When he finally paused, glass of Bordeaux halfway to his lips, she knew it was time. "Richard," she said, her voice remarkably steady, "I have something to tell you." He set down his glass, giving her his full attention. The candlelight softened his features, reminding her of the man who'd told her she was extraordinary, who'd promised Paris and possibilities. "Richard, I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. "We're going to have a baby." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Sophia watched as Richard's expression shifted. Surprise, confusion, and then something else. Something cold that sent a chill down her spine before he carefully wiped all emotion from his face. He placed his napkin on the table with deliberate precision. "You're sure?" His voice was neutral, controlled. "Yes, about 9 weeks." Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you're sure it's mine?" The question hit Sophia like a physical blow. She recoiled, one hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "What did you just say to me?" Something dark flashed across Richard's face as he pushed back from the table, his chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. "Do you have any idea what this means? What you've done?" "What I've done?" Sophia stood too, confusion and hurt battling in her chest. "This happened to both of us." "No." Richard's voice rose sharply. "This happened to me. My life, my career, my family's expectations." He paced across the dining room, running both hands through his hair. "Do you know what the board will say? What my parents will think?" Sophia stood frozen, watching this transformation in the man she thought she knew. "Richard, please. I thought—" "You thought what?" He whirled toward her, his face contorted with anger. "That I'd be thrilled? That I'd throw away everything I've built for this?" "This is our child," Sophia said, her voice cracking. "I'm not asking you to throw anything away." Richard laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the floor-to-ceiling windows. "A child? With you?" He shook his head. "An immigrant Latina waitress pregnant with my baby? Is that what you think combines with my image? With my future?" Each word struck her like shards of glass. Sophia struggled to reconcile this cruel stranger with the man who'd held her just hours earlier. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You said—" "I said a lot of things, Sophia." Richard stalked to the bedroom and she heard drawers being yanked open. When he returned, he carried the small travel bag she kept at his place. He began throwing her few possessions inside, a spare set of clothes, her toothbrush, a paperback novel. "What are you doing?" Panic rose in her throat. "Being practical." He didn't look at her as he moved methodically through the apartment, collecting every trace of her presence. "You're a burden, Sophia. I need someone at my level, not a waitress with dreams bigger than her capability." Tears blurred her vision as she followed him. "Richard, please. It's our baby. We can make this work. I'm not asking for anything." "Anything?" He stopped suddenly, turning to face her with cold fury. "You're asking for everything. My name, my reputation, my life." He zipped the bag closed with a decisive motion. "I have plans, Sophia. I'm about to expand into Asia. I'm being considered for the board. I need a partner who enhances my position, not someone who drags me down." "Is that all I was to you?" Sophia's voice was barely audible. "A temporary amusement until you found someone more suitable?" Richard's expression softened momentarily, almost regretful. "You were fun, interesting, different." He sighed. "But this was never going to be permanent. You must have known that." The truth crashed over Sophia with sickening clarity. All those business dinners where she'd been introduced as my friend, the family events she'd never been invited to, the careful compartmentalization of their relationship. "I thought you saw me," she said quietly. "The real me." "I saw a pretty waitress with unusual insight into technology." Richard walked to his desk, pulled out a checkbook, and began writing. Nothing more, nothing less. He tore out the check and held it out to her. $10,000. Solve your problem and forget I exist. Sophia stared at the check, nausea rising in her throat. "It's not a problem," she whispered, tears flowing freely now. "It's a baby." "Then do the world a favor. Disappear with it." Richard thrust the check toward her more forcefully. "You've always been common, Sophia. Predictable. Boring. I need someone extraordinary by my side, not someone who will pull me down." She took the check with numb fingers, the amount, more money than she'd ever held at once, blurring through her tears. "How can you say these things? How can you be this person?" Richard picked up her bag and extended it toward her. "This is who I've always been. You just saw what you wanted to see." His voice dropped, almost gentle in its cruelty. "A child of mine with your blood isn't worth even my surname." Something broke inside Sophia then, not just her heart, but something deeper, more fundamental. The careful architecture of dreams and possibilities she'd constructed collapsed in an instant. Without another word, she took the bag. Pride kept her spine straight as she walked to the door, Richard following a few steps behind. "Sophia." His voice stopped her with her hand on the doorknob. For one heartbreaking moment, hope flickered. "Don't contact me again. For anything." The elevator ride to the lobby was the longest of her life. Sophia leaned against the mirrored wall, her reflection fractured and pale. 9 floors to reconstruct her world, 8 floors to stop the tears, 7 floors to start breathing again. By the time the doors opened to the marble-floored lobby, she had achieved a fragile composure that carried her past the concerned glance of the night doorman and out into the bitter January night. The wind off Lake Michigan cut through her thin dress. She'd left her coat upstairs, she realized distantly. Too late to go back now, too late for so many things. Sophia stumbled down the pristine sidewalk of Lakeshore Drive, the designer buildings growing blurry through fresh tears. The check in her pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric, branded with words unspoken but clear. Your silence, your absence, your shame. "You never will be enough," Richard had said, his final pronouncement on her worth. Traffic rushed past, yellow cabs and luxury cars carrying people to warm homes and welcoming arms. Sophia clutched her small bag against her chest like a shield, the reality of her situation sinking in with each step away from the life she'd foolishly believed might become hers. Pregnant, alone, with $10,000 and nowhere to go. She would not cry on this street, would not give him the satisfaction, even in absentia. Tomorrow she would figure out next steps. Tomorrow she would be practical, resourceful, determined. All the things she'd been before Richard Bennett had waltzed into her life with promises of Paris and potential. But tonight, as the wind whipped tears from her cheeks and froze them before they could fall, Sophia Martinez allowed herself one moment of complete despair. While she staggered down the pristine sidewalk of Lakeshore Drive that freezing January night, clutching a bag and a check, Sophia had no way of knowing that the cruel words Richard had spat at her would become the fuel for such a meteoric rise that 15 years later she would buy his last hotel just to have the satisfaction of demolishing it. The wind bit through Sophia's thin dress as she walked for blocks, her mind numb with shock. Eventually, she found herself at a 24-hour diner, where she sat in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she couldn't bring herself to drink. The check for $10,000 lay on the table before her, crisp and official, with Richard Bennett's elegant signature at the bottom. Blood money, hush money, the price he placed on erasing his responsibility. 3 days later, Sophia received a text message from the restaurant manager, "Don't come in today or tomorrow. Position filled. Sorry." No explanation, no 2 weeks' notice. Just swift, clean excision from her livelihood. When she called, the hostess whispered that Mr. Peterson, the owner, had lunch with Richard Bennett the previous day. Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, phone clutched in her hand, calculating rapidly. Her portion of the rent was due in 10 days. The spring semester tuition payment deadline loomed just behind it. And now, no income. The $10,000 that had seemed insulting 3 days ago now represented a fragile lifeline. Half of Richard's money disappeared into her landlord's hands the next week, securing her tiny bedroom in the apartment she shared with 2 other students for the next 3 months. The remainder she divided meticulously: tuition, prenatal vitamins, a small emergency fund. The neat columns in her budget spreadsheet left no room for luxuries or uncertainties. The morning sickness hit with merciless precision, always at 7:30, just when she would have been serving the breakfast rush at the restaurant. Sophia knelt on the cold bathroom tile, retching until her ribs ached, then rinsed her mouth and straightened her clothes. No time for weakness. Not now. Just a placement service interview, she told her roommate Jen, who watched with concern as Sophia applied concealer to the dark circles under her eyes. Nothing fancy, just something to tide me over. The employment agency was housed in a grimy office building in a part of Chicago tourists never saw. Sophia sat upright in an uncomfortable plastic chair, her resume, highlighting her restaurant experience and partial college education, clutched in her hands. Pregnant? The interviewer's eyes flickered to Sophia's still flat stomach, then back to her application. How far along? 10 weeks, Sophia answered, her voice steady. But I'm healthy and can work without restrictions. The woman's expression remained neutral, but her pen made a small notation on the form. Right. Well, with your background, we might have a few options. Service industry positions, perhaps some office work. By the end of the week, Sophia had cobbled together a patchwork of employment. Morning cleaning shifts at the Marriott downtown, afternoon cashier work at a grocery store 6 blocks from her apartment, and overnight data entry at a legal firm that needed documents digitized. Between the 3 jobs, she would make just enough to survive after her savings ran out. Her first morning at the Marriott, Sophia stood in the employee locker room, staring at the gray uniform with grim determination. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was now cleaning rooms in a hotel competing with the Bennett chain. As she pushed her cart down long corridors, stripping beds where businessmen slept, scrubbing toilets they used, polishing mirrors they glanced in before important meetings, she sometimes imagined Richard walking through the door. What would he say, seeing her there? Would he even recognize her? Or would she be invisible to him, just another nameless worker in a service uniform? The grocery store offered different challenges. Standing for hours made her ankles swell. The smell of the meat counter triggered waves of nausea she fought to conceal. But the manager, a mother of 3, noticed anyway. First trimester? She asked during Sophia's break, sliding a ginger ale across the table in the employee room. Sip it slowly. Helps with the nausea. Sophia accepted with grateful surprise. How did you know? Been there 3 times. The woman, Maria, her name tag read, smiled sympathetically. The meat counter was my nemesis too. I'll put you on register 5 when I can. It's farthest from the deli section. These small kindnesses were rare bright spots in days that stretched into exhausting marathons. Sophia would finish her hotel shift at 2 in the afternoon, grab a quick sandwich on her walk to the grocery store, work until 9, sleep for 3 hours, then drag herself to the law firm for the overnight shift. Between 3 and 7 in the morning, she would type steadily, converting paper files to digital records, fighting to keep her eyes open, often talking aloud to her unborn child just to stay awake. We're going to be okay, she would whisper, one hand on her gradually swelling belly. I'm going to finish school. We're going to have a good life. Better than this. Her pregnancy progressed, marking time with physical changes she tracked with weary fascination. The first flutters of movement felt like hope stirring inside her. On her rare evenings off, Sophia attended her classes, struggling to focus through a fog of exhaustion. Her professors noticed her declining participation but mistook the cause. Ms. Martinez, your midterm paper showed promise but lacked your usual insight, her business strategy professor commented after class. Is everything all right? Just working through some personal challenges, Sophia replied, tugging her loose sweater to better hide her growing bump. I'll do better on the final. She kept her promise, staying up for 36 hours straight to complete a case study that earned her the highest grade in the class. The professor, impressed, wrote a note at the bottom. This shows remarkable analytical thinking. You have a future in strategic planning if you want it." Sophia taped the paper to her bathroom mirror, a reminder on the hardest days that someone still saw her potential. By her 5th month, the physical toll became impossible to ignore. Her body, depleted by lack of sleep and constant work, began to rebel. Dizziness plagued her at unexpected moments. During a busy Saturday shift at the grocery store while scanning a customer's organic produce, the fluorescent lights above her began to pulse strangely. The cashier station seemed to tilt, the scanner slipping from her fingers and clattering to the counter. "Miss, are you okay?" The customer's voice sounded distant, underwater. Sophia tried to respond, but darkness crowded the edges of her vision. Her last conscious thought was of protection, one arm wrapping instinctively around her belly as she crumpled to the floor. She awoke to the antiseptic smell of a hospital room, a fetal monitor strapped to her abdomen, and Maria from the grocery store sitting beside her bed. "The baby?" Sophia asked immediately, panic rising. "Is fine for now." The doctor appeared in the doorway, chart in hand. Her expression was stern but not unkind. "But you won't be if you continue like this. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, dangerously low blood pressure. Your body is telling you something, Ms. Martinez. I suggest you listen." The doctor's words hung in the sterile air between them. 3 jobs while pregnant? Your body simply cannot sustain this pace. Either you reduce your workload or you risk losing this pregnancy. It's that simple. After the doctor left, Sophia stared at the ceiling, tears sliding silently into her hair. Maria squeezed her hand once, then quietly departed, promising to hold her job for 2 weeks if she needed rest. Alone in the hospital room, listening to the steady rhythm of her baby's heartbeat on the monitor, Sophia confronted the brutal reality of her situation. She couldn't physically continue all 3 jobs, but she couldn't financially survive on fewer hours either. The remaining money from Richard would barely cover another month's expenses. She was trapped in an impossible equation, variables that refused to balance. That night, after being discharged with strict instructions to rest, Sophia stood before the bathroom mirror in her apartment. Her reflection was a stranger's, hollow-cheeked, dark circles like bruises beneath her eyes, collarbones too prominent above the swell of her pregnancy. She looked haunted, hunted, half-vanished already. Placing both hands on her rounded belly, she felt a strong kick against her palm. Life, insistent and determined. "He's wrong about us," she whispered to her reflection, to her child. "I'm going to prove it. We won't just survive, we'll thrive." The words, spoken aloud, crystallized something that had been forming in her mind during those long nights of data entry. A possibility. A path forward. The following morning, despite the doctor's orders, Sophia took the bus to her university campus. Not for classes, but for the small, unassuming building that housed the business school's startup incubator. She had avoided it before, feeling unready, her ideas too unformed, but desperation was a powerful clarifier. Professor Wexler, who directed the incubator program, looked up in surprise when she knocked on his open door. "Ms. Martinez, shouldn't you be resting? I heard about your collapse." "I need 15 minutes of your time," Sophia said, lowering herself carefully into the chair across from his desk. "I have a project that could revolutionize medication distribution in public hospitals." She opened her laptop, turning it to face him. On the screen was the system she had been refining in stolen moments between jobs, an algorithm that optimized distribution of medications and supplies within hospitals, reducing waste and delivery time. "I've been developing this for months, using data patterns I observed while researching healthcare logistics for my strategic management class." She navigated through the prototype, explaining each feature with precision. "Current hospital systems waste an average of 22% of nursing time on logistics that could be automated. My system reduces that to under 5%. Professor Wexler's skepticism gradually gave way to genuine interest as she walked him through the potential cost savings and efficiency gains. When she finished, he sat back, studying her with new eyes. "This has commercial potential," he admitted. "Significant potential. But developing it properly will require time and resources, both of which I'm short on at the moment," Sophia acknowledged, one hand resting on her belly. The professor's gaze followed the gesture. "There's an emergency grant for students with exceptional circumstances, and we have a mentorship program that includes a small stipend." He wrote down a figure that made Sophia's breath catch. "Not a fortune, but enough to let you focus on developing this properly, if you're serious about it." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," Sophia replied, her voice steady despite the hope threatening to overwhelm her. As she left the campus that afternoon, the spring sunshine warming her face for the first time in what felt like months, Sophia felt her baby move energetically. She placed a protective hand over the spot, a smile touching her lips. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to her unborn child while walking away from the campus. "One day, he'll regret every word he said." What Sophia didn't know, as she walked home that day with new purpose in her steps, was that the modest hospital optimization project she carried, both in her laptop and in her mind, would be just the first piece of a technological empire that, in 15 years, would revolutionize American healthcare and make Richard Bennett look like a mere amateur in the business world. The sunset painted streaks of amber across the hospital room as Sophia clutched Elena's hand with unexpected force. 26 hours into labor, her body had become a landscape of pain, cresting in waves that left her gasping. "You're doing great," Elena reassured her, though they had only been classmates in a business analytics course before this moment thrust them into an intimacy neither had anticipated. When Sophia had awkwardly asked if Elena might accompany her for the birth, she'd expected polite refusal. Instead, Elena had shown up with a duffel bag and determination. "My sister had 3 kids. I've seen worse." Sophia managed a weak smile between contractions. "Not exactly how I imagined our study partnership evolving." The night stretched endlessly as Sophia's labor progressed. The fluorescent hospital lights buzzed overhead, the clock's hands crawling forward with excruciating slowness. Just after 3 in the morning, the doctor announced she was fully dilated. "On the next contraction, I need you to push," the doctor instructed, positioning herself at the foot of the bed. 47 minutes later, the piercing cry of new life filled the room. Sophia collapsed against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure, as the nurse placed a squirming bundle on her chest. "Congratulations," the doctor said, smiling. "You have a healthy son." Sophia's trembling fingers gently brushed the downy head, and the baby's eyes opened, startlingly, piercingly blue. Richard's eyes, unmistakable even in this tiny face. "He has blue eyes," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Like his father." Elena squeezed her shoulder. "But he has your determination. Did you hear that cry? This kid's going to make himself heard." 3 days later, Sophia carried Alexander James Martinez, Alex, into her tiny apartment. The space, barely adequate for one, now seemed impossibly small for 2. In the corner of her bedroom stood a white wooden crib, a gift from Professor Wexler and several other faculty members who had taken interest in her project and situation. Her roommates had moved out the previous month, unable to reconcile themselves with the idea of a newborn in their student apartment. The rent now consumed nearly all the stipend from the incubator program, leaving precious little for everything else. That first night alone with Alex, reality descended with crushing weight. Every cry seemed deafening in the small space. Every diaper change, every feeding became a monumental task for her recovering body. When she finally got him to sleep in the second-hand crib, Sophia collapsed onto her bed, only to hear her laptop ping with an email notification. With leaden limbs, she reached for the computer. It was from the hospital administrator she had met weeks earlier, inquiring about progress on her system prototype. They were interested in seeing preliminary results by the end of the month. Sophia glanced at the sleeping newborn, then back at the email. Sleep beckoned with irresistible force, but opportunity wouldn't wait. She propped herself up against the headboard, positioned the laptop on her knees, and began to code. This became her new normal. Alex nursing at her breast while she typed one-handed, the baby asleep in a makeshift sling across her chest as she refined algorithms, stealing minutes to work while he napped, fighting her own exhaustion. When her eyes would begin to close involuntarily, she'd brew another cup of strong coffee and whisper to herself, "Just one more function, just one more feature." 2 weeks after Alex's birth, Sophia set up her first post-delivery meeting with Professor Wexler. With no childcare and no options, she bundled Alex into his second-hand stroller and wheeled him into the professor's office. "I apologize for bringing him," she began as the baby started to fuss. "I couldn't find anyone to—" "No apologies needed," Wexler interrupted, rising to peer at the infant. "So this is your co-developer?" His kindness nearly undid her. "He's been supervising from his crib," she managed, reaching into the stroller to soothe Alex. The meeting proceeded with frequent interruptions, a diaper change, a feeding, burping, but Sophia presented her progress with unwavering focus, navigating through the latest version of her hospital optimization system while gently bouncing Alex against her shoulder. "The inventory tracking module is complete," she explained, pointing to the screen. "The predictive ordering algorithm still needs refinement, but preliminary tests show a 32% reduction in stock discrepancies." Professor Wexler watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "This is impressive work, especially given the circumstances. But Sophia, when are you sleeping?" She managed a tired smile. Sleep is overrated. The truth was more complicated. Many nights, she would drift off at her computer, jerking awake with a start to check on Alex, heart pounding until she confirmed he was safe. Then immediately back to work, the constant hum of anxiety about money, deadlines, and the future driving her forward. As weeks became months, Sophia developed a rhythm that allowed her to progress both as a mother and as a developer. She discovered that Alex would sleep soundly if nestled against her in a wrap while she worked, his tiny breaths synchronizing with the tapping of her keyboard. She learned to nurse him while reviewing code, to soothe his cries while running program tests. Finding affordable childcare proved nearly impossible. After exhaustive research, Sophia located a small family daycare that would take Alex for 4 hours 3 times a week, just enough time for her to attend her most critical classes. The expense consumed a painful percentage of her stipend, but education remained non-negotiable in her mind. The first day she left him at daycare, Sophia stood outside the building for 10 minutes, physically unable to walk away. When she finally did, tears streamed down her face the entire walk to campus. In class, she checked her phone every 5 minutes, expecting catastrophe. By Alex's 5th month, Sophia's graduation loomed just weeks away. Despite everything, she had maintained her GPA, completed her project development, and was on track to graduate with honors. The hospital optimization system had progressed from concept to functional prototype, with a pilot implementation scheduled at the university hospital. On graduation day, Sophia dressed Alex in a tiny button-up shirt and miniature bow tie, both thrift store finds she had carefully altered. She wore her only professional outfit, a navy skirt suit purchased second-hand and tailored during late nights after Alex fell asleep. "We did it, little man," she whispered, securing him in his carrier. "Both of us." The ceremony passed in a blur of exhaustion and pride. When her name was called, Sophia Isabel Martinez, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Technology with honors, she walked across the stage with Alex in her arms, his tiny fingers clutching the collar of her graduation gown. There was no family cheering, no one to capture the moment with a camera, but the weight of her son against her chest felt like victory nonetheless. Professor Wexler found her after the ceremony. "The hospital committee reviewed your proposal," he said without preamble. "They want to implement a trial run of your system." Sophia's heart leapt. "When?" "Next month. But," he hesitated, "they're offering only a 30-day window to prove its effectiveness. If it doesn't demonstrate significant improvement in their metrics, they'll revert to their current system. 30 days is all I need, Sophia replied, confidence overriding exhaustion. The following weeks blurred into a frenzy of preparation. Sophia worked through nights, Alex sleeping in a portable crib beside her desk. She refined interfaces, optimized algorithms, and created training materials for the hospital staff. When the implementation date arrived, she had been awake for nearly 40 hours straight. Sophia arrived at the hospital at midnight, when the system transition would least disrupt operations. She carried Alex, now 6 months old, in his carrier. A sympathetic night nurse helped set up a makeshift sleeping space for him in an empty office while Sophia began the installation. For hours, she worked methodically, transferring data, configuring settings, testing connections. Occasionally, she would pause to check on Alex or feed him, then return to her task with renewed determination. As dawn approached, hospital staff began arriving for the morning shift. "You're the system designer?" A nurse peered skeptically at Sophia, taking in her youth, the sleeping baby, the obvious exhaustion. "Yes," Sophia straightened, professionalism overtaking fatigue. "I'll be guiding you through the transition. The interface is intuitive, but I'm here to address any issues that arise." That first day was excruciating. Staff members struggled with unfamiliar screens, doctors complained about changed workflows, administrators hovered anxiously, questioning every minor delay. Sophia moved from department to department, troubleshooting, explaining, encouraging, all while periodically ducking away to tend to Alex. By midnight, she had fixed 17 bugs, answered hundreds of questions, and was running purely on adrenaline and determination. When she finally returned to her apartment, she collapsed onto her bed fully clothed, Alex nestled beside her. The next 6 days followed a similar pattern. Gradually, complaints decreased. Staff began reporting time savings. Nurses mentioned spending more time with patients and less time hunting for supplies. By the end of the first week, Sophia's phone rang, the hospital administrator calling after hours. "I've been reviewing the preliminary data," he said without greeting. "Medication delivery times have decreased by 30%. Supply requisition errors are down by 27%. What exactly did you do to our systems?" Sophia smiled, exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "I just made them work the way they should." There was a pause. "The staff is already resisting the idea of going back to the old system. I think we need to discuss a more permanent arrangement." After the call, Sophia picked up Alex from his crib. He was awake, blue eyes wide and curious as she swayed with him around their tiny apartment. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, dancing with her baby in her arms. "They want our system. We did it, Alex." She twirled him gently, his giggles filling the small space with a joy that temporarily erased the memory of Richard's cruel dismissal, the months of grinding poverty, the endless exhaustion. For this moment, there was only triumph and the warm weight of her son in her arms. Later that night, Sophia sat by the window of her apartment, Alex sleeping peacefully in her lap. She gazed out at Chicago's skyline, the lights of downtown buildings glimmering like distant stars. "This is just the beginning, my love," she murmured, stroking his soft hair. "One day, everyone will know our worth." What Sophia didn't know, as she cradled her son that night, was that in just 5 years, the same Richard Bennett who had dismissed her as insignificant would be attending a conference where her system would be presented as revolutionary, and he would have no idea that the CEO behind the innovation was the same woman he had told to disappear. 3 years had passed since that night Sophia had rocked Alex to sleep beside the window, whispering promises of a better future. Now, with determined precision, she adjusted the final pixel on the Innovatech Solutions logo displayed on her computer screen, a stylized blue and silver design that represented both healing and technology. "What do you think, buddy? Is it perfect?" she asked, glancing at the 3-year-old boy beside her, his dark curls falling over his forehead as he concentrated on his own artistic creation. Alex held up his paper proudly. On it, a colorful scribble that vaguely resembled their logo if viewed with enough imagination. "Mine better," he declared with a confident nod. Sophia laughed, pulling him onto her lap to plant a kiss on the top of his head. "Absolutely. We'll use yours for our next business cards." The office around them was little more than a converted storage space above a laundromat, affordable commercial real estate for a startup with more ambition than capital. One desk supported 2 refurbished computers. A whiteboard covered with flowcharts and code sequences dominated one wall. In the corner, a carefully arranged play area featured donated toys, educational games, and a small table where Alex spent his days while Sophia built her company piece by piece. With the business incubator's support and her system's successful implementation at the university hospital, Sophia had secured a small business loan and officially founded Innovatech Solutions. The company existed largely on paper and potential, but it was hers. The patent for her hospital optimization system granted just months earlier. "Ms. Martinez, your 11 o'clock is here," called Elena from the doorway. Once merely a classmate who'd held Sophia's hand during labor, she was now Innovatech's first and only employee, working part-time while finishing her MBA. "Coming." Sophia quickly smoothed Alex's shirt, then her own. "Remember, quiet voice during Mommy's meeting, right?" Alex nodded solemnly, returning to his drawing as Sophia straightened her second-hand blazer and checked her reflection in the small mirror beside her desk. Professional, capable, confident, she reminded herself of these qualities daily, especially before meetings like today's with potential clients who often saw only her youth, gender, and ethnicity before noticing her expertise. In the small conference room, really just a partitioned section of their office, 3 middle-aged executives from Chicago Memorial Hospital waited. Their expressions shifted subtly when Sophia entered. Surprise, then the too familiar flicker of dismissal. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming," she began, extending her hand with practiced confidence. "I'm Sophia Martinez, founder and CEO of Innovatech Solutions." The oldest man, his silver hair matching his expensive suit, raised an eyebrow. "You're the developer? We were expecting someone more experienced," Sophia supplied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My system has been operational at University Hospital for 11 months, reducing medication delivery errors by 42% and saving them approximately $150,000. I'd call that experience." She launched into her presentation, navigating through demonstrations with precision born of countless rehearsals. Halfway through, she heard a small crash from the other room, followed by Alex's voice calling, "Mama! Spill!" Sophia didn't miss a beat. "If you'll excuse me for just one moment," she said, stepping out to find Alex standing beside an overturned cup of apple juice. Elena was already rushing over with paper towels. "I got this," Elena whispered. "Go finish." "Thank you," Sophia murmured, quickly helping Alex remove his wet shoes before returning to the conference room. "Sorry for the interruption, gentlemen. Now, as I was explaining about the inventory prediction algorithm," she could see it in their eyes, the moment they mentally downgraded her from potential vendor to distracted mother. By the meeting's end, their polite decline was hardly surprising. "Your system shows promise," the silver-haired executive said, not quite meeting her eyes. "But we're looking for something more established. Perhaps when you have more institutional clients, we can revisit." After they left, Sophia sank into a chair, the familiar weight of rejection settling on her shoulders. "They're idiots," Elena declared, joining her with Alex in tow. "University Hospital's numbers speak for themselves." "But they don't speak loudly enough yet," Sophia replied, pulling Alex onto her lap. "We need more clients, more data, more proof." That night, after putting Alex to bed in their new apartment, still small but a significant upgrade from her student housing, Sophia stood before the bathroom mirror. "They're not rejecting you," she told her reflection firmly. "They're just not ready for what you're offering." Yet. The following months brought a rhythm of determined progress punctuated by frustrating setbacks. Sophia developed a routine. Mornings spent coding while Alex played nearby, afternoons making calls and sending proposals, evenings dedicated entirely to her son. After his bedtime, she would return to work until exhaustion claimed her, often falling asleep at her desk. Small victories sustained them. A community clinic adopted a scaled-down version of her system. A second university hospital signed on for a trial. Each implementation strengthened her data, proving the system's effectiveness across different environments. On a crisp autumn morning, Sophia and Alex celebrated their biggest win yet, a contract with a small regional medical center. Their celebration was simple: ice cream cones at the park, Alex's face smeared with chocolate as he chased pigeons. "Mommy's system made the computers at the hospital work better," she explained when he asked why they were celebrating. "And now we can buy new shoes for you." "And for you?" he asked, eyeing her worn flats. "Maybe next time," she smiled, mentally reallocating their budget. Professional appearances mattered in client meetings, but Alex's growing feet couldn't wait. Later that week, while shopping for interview clothes at a second-hand store, Alex tugged at her hand. "Where's my daddy?" The question she'd been dreading froze Sophia mid-step. Around them, other shoppers browsed racks of discounted business wear, oblivious to her internal panic. "Alex," she began, kneeling to his level, "some families have mommies and daddies. Some have just mommies like us. But why?" His blue eyes, so like Richard's, fixed on her with innocent curiosity. "Tyler and Emma have daddies. Why not me?" Sophia swallowed hard. "Because sometimes grown-ups make different choices. Your daddy made a different choice. But that doesn't mean you're not loved. You have me and Elena and your teachers who all care about you very much." Alex considered this, his little forehead furrowed in concentration. "Okay," he said finally, his acceptance both a relief and a heartbreak. "Can I have the red shoes?" That night, Sophia researched child development books about single parenting, fighting tears as she read about the importance of father figures. She couldn't give Alex a father, but she could build a secure future for him, a legacy of his own. Winter brought new challenges and opportunities. A regional healthcare technology conference accepted Sophia's application to present her system. With limited funds for professional attire, she spent evenings altering a navy suit purchased from a consignment shop, determined to project the confidence her company's future depended on. The night before the conference, Sophia practiced her presentation in front of the bathroom mirror while Alex, in dinosaur pajamas, sat on the closed toilet lid repeating phrases from her speech in his childish voice. "Optimize hospital workflows," he mimicked seriously. "Reduce unnecessary expenditures." "Perfect," Sophia laughed, scooping him up. "You should deliver the presentation tomorrow." Morning brought a crisis when the babysitter canceled last minute. Elena, already scheduled to manage their exhibition booth, became Sophia's only option. "I'll watch him during your presentation," Elena promised, adjusting Sophia's collar as they stood outside the convention center. "Just focus on knocking their socks off." Sophia knelt to Alex's level. "Mommy has to go talk to important people about her computer program. Be good for Auntie Elena, okay? I'll be back soon." Walking into the presentation room, Sophia's heart sank. Only 7 people sat scattered across a space designed for 50. She took a deep breath, remembering Richard's words, "Dreams bigger than your capability." Squaring her shoulders, she began. 5 minutes in, more attendees trickled in, attracted by her clear explanations and compelling data. By the halfway point, the room had filled, with people standing along the walls. When she finished, hands shot up throughout the audience, genuine interest, pointed questions, requests for business cards she didn't have enough of. One silver-haired hospital administrator raised his hand last. "Your system sounds promising, but frankly, you seem very..." He paused, searching for a diplomatic word. inexperienced. Why should we trust something this critical to someone so new to the industry? The room quieted. Sophia felt a familiar surge of frustration but kept her expression pleasant. My system has saved University Hospital $150,000 in just 6 months, she replied evenly. Numbers don't lie, even when they come from someone inexperienced. I welcome your skepticism. It gives me the opportunity to exceed your expectations. After the presentation, 3 hospital representatives requested meetings. A medical supply chain director asked for a demonstration, and most importantly, the CEO of a mid-sized hospital network handed Sophia his card. I like disruptors, he said simply. Call my office Monday. That evening, the contract was signed in Sophia's tiny office. Innovatech's first major client, a 5-hospital network that would implement her system across all their facilities. The advance payment would allow her to hire 2 developers, move to a legitimate office space, and finally draw a modest salary. We did it, buddy, Sophia exclaimed, twirling Alex around their apartment after the executives left. Mommy got the big contract. We can move to a bigger apartment now with a bedroom just for you. With blue walls? Alex asked, eyes wide with excitement. Any color you want? She promised, her heart overflowing with a mixture of triumph, relief, and vindication. Later, as Alex slept soundly in his bed, Sophia stood by the window, looking out at Chicago's skyline. She thought about the journey from that night 3 years ago, from pregnant and abandoned to founder and CEO, from desperation to determination, from survival to the first glimpses of success. As she celebrated that first major victory with Alex, Sophia didn't imagine that in just 2 years, her company would be valued at $50 million, and that Businessweek would put her photo on the cover, an edition that would accidentally fall into Richard Bennett's hands during a business flight. The Businessweek magazine slipped from Richard Bennett's fingers, landing with a soft thud on the first-class cabin floor of his flight to Singapore. He stared at the cover, disbelief widening his eyes as he registered the familiar face, older, more polished but unmistakable, smiling confidently beneath the headline, Healthcare's Tech Revolutionary, How Sophia Martinez Built a $50 million Empire from Nothing. He quickly retrieved the magazine, scanning the article with growing discomfort. Innovatech Solutions, founded 5 years ago, revolutionary hospital management systems, contracts with over 40 major medical centers nationwide. The words blurred as a memory surfaced. Sophia at his dinner table, enthusiastically explaining how technology could transform healthcare logistics while he half listened, amused by her passion but dismissive of her naive ideas. Richard closed the magazine, signaled for another scotch, and tried to ignore the unsettling sensation in his stomach. Coincidence, surely. Many people had similar ideas. The flight attendant delivered his drink with a practiced smile, and he gulped it down, pushing thoughts of Sophia Martinez from his mind. 5 years after Richard had cast her from his life, Sophia stood at the entrance of Innovatech's new Chicago headquarters, supervising as workers installed the company logo on the wall of the reception area. At 27, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had built something substantial from nothing but determination and intelligence. A little higher on the left, she directed, shifting Alex's weight on her hip. Now 5 years old, he watched the installation with intense focus, his blue eyes, so like his biological father's, taking in every detail. "Can I cut the ribbon too, Mommy?" he asked, pointing to the ceremonial scissors and red ribbon prepared for the office's official opening later that day. "Of course you can," Sophia smiled, setting him down. "I got special scissors just for you." She produced a child-sized pair of safety scissors from her pocket, earning a delighted grin. Elena approached, tablet in hand. "The caterers are set up, the press will arrive at 11, and the first employees are already moving into their workstations." She glanced around the spacious, light-filled office. Hard to believe this started in that glorified closet above the laundromat. 50 employees. Sophia shook her head slightly. Sometimes I still can't believe it." The company had grown exponentially after securing its first major hospital contract. Sophia's system had proven so effective at reducing costs and improving patient care that word spread rapidly through the healthcare industry. Within 2 years, Innovatech had expanded from optimization of medication distribution to comprehensive hospital management software, with modules for everything from bed allocation to predictive maintenance of equipment. The ribbon-cutting ceremony that afternoon represented more than just a new office. It was the physical manifestation of Sophia's vision becoming reality. As cameras flashed and local business reporters asked questions, she kept Alex close, including him in every aspect of the celebration. Innovatech began as a solution to a real problem I observed in healthcare delivery, she told the gathered crowd, but it's grown into something I never could have imagined 5 years ago. A platform that helps hospitals deliver better care more efficiently, saving both money and lives. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and most employees had gone home, Sophia took Alex on a tour of their new headquarters. "This is where our engineers write the special instructions that make the computers help doctors and nurses," she explained, showing him the development team's area. "And this is where people answer calls from hospitals if they need help with our system." Alex nodded seriously, absorbing everything. "When I grow up, I want to make computers do things too." "You already do, sweetie," Sophia smiled, thinking of the simple games he'd learned to create with the child-friendly coding program she'd installed on his tablet. At 5, he already showed an aptitude for logical thinking that both delighted and occasionally startled her. The new office came with another significant change. They had finally moved from their modest apartment to a comfortable house in a good school district. Alex's reaction to having his own room had been pure joy, running from corner to corner as if mapping his new territory. "Can we paint it blue?" he'd asked immediately, remembering Sophia's promise from years earlier. "Any shade you want," she had confirmed, watching as he twirled in excitement. The expanded space represented security she'd once thought impossible. The master bedroom had its own bathroom, a luxury that still felt indulgent. The kitchen had new appliances and enough counter space to cook proper meals. There was even a small yard where Alex could play. Yet success brought new challenges. As Innovatech grew, so did the demands on Sophia's time. Client meetings, investor pitches, and development reviews competed with school drop-offs, dinner times, and bedtime stories. One Tuesday morning, Sophia sat in her office reviewing quarterly projections when her phone rang. Alex's school. "Ms. Martinez? Alex is performing in the kindergarten presentation in 30 minutes. The other parents are already arriving." Sophia's heart sank as she glanced at her calendar. She had completely forgotten. On her schedule was a video conference with potential investors from New York, impossible to reschedule. "I'll be right there," she said without hesitation, already closing her laptop. Her assistant looked alarmed when Sophia explained the situation. "But the Mackenzie Group call, reschedule it. Tell them there's been a family emergency." Sophia grabbed her coat. "Some things aren't negotiable." 20 minutes later, she slipped into the elementary school auditorium, finding a seat just as Alex's class filed onto the small stage. His face lit up when he spotted her, a tiny wave sending a pang of love so intense it nearly brought tears to her eyes. She would have walked away from 100 investor meetings for that moment. The balancing act became her permanent state, CEO and mother, each role demanding her full presence. Sophia established firm boundaries, no meetings during Alex's school events, dinner together every night possible, weekends protected for family time unless absolutely unavoidable. Her leadership team learned to work around these non-negotiables, some admiring her priorities, others quietly questioning her commitment. The question Sophia had been dreading finally came on a Saturday afternoon at the playground. Alex, having made a new friend, watched the boy's father push him on the swings. "Mommy," he asked as they walked home, "where is my daddy? The other kids have them. Why don't I?" Sophia had prepared for this moment, read books on how to explain absence to children, but theory felt woefully inadequate in the face of her son's curious blue eyes. Some families are different, she began carefully, kneeling to his level on the sidewalk. Our family is you and me and all the people who love us, like Elena and your teachers and Grandma Maria. She had adopted her former grocery store manager as an honorary grandmother for Alex, the older woman delighted to fill the role. But why don't I have a daddy like Tom does? Alex persisted. Sophia took a deep breath. Your biological father, the man who helped make you, wasn't ready to be a daddy. He made a different choice. She stroked his cheek gently. But that has nothing to do with you, Alex. It was about him, not you. Alex considered this with the solemnity only a 5-year-old could muster. Is he ever coming back? No, sweetheart. But we don't need him to, do we? We're doing pretty great on our own. That evening, after tucking Alex into his blue-walled bedroom, Sophia found herself standing in the kitchen, staring at the magazine rack where the latest issue of Fortune lay open to a feature on Richard Bennett. Hotel Air Faces Challenges, Bennett Hotels Struggles Amid Expansion Setbacks. She had bought the magazine on impulse, a moment of weakness in the airport newsstand. The article detailed Richard's ambitious but troubled expansion into Asian markets, hinting at boardroom tensions and declining profits. The accompanying photo showed him at a press conference, still handsome but with new lines around his eyes, a tightness to his smile that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Sophia closed the magazine, feeling a complex emotion she couldn't quite name. Not satisfaction at his troubles, nor lingering hurt from his rejection. Perhaps it was simply the recognition that their paths had diverged so completely, hers ascending as his faltered. The following week brought a significant milestone. Innovatech secured its first $1 million profit. Sophia celebrated with a simple dinner, inviting Elena and the company's earliest employees to her home. Alex proudly helped serve dessert, his ease with the adult guests reflecting his years of growing up in business settings. To Innovatech, Elena raised her glass in a toast, and to Sophia, who saw a future no one else could imagine. Later, after the guests had departed and Alex was asleep, Sophia watched a late-night business report featuring an interview with Richard. He looked defensive as he answered questions about Bennett Hotel's recent stock decline, blaming market conditions and unforeseen regulatory challenges. We remain confident in our strategy, he insisted, though his tight expression suggested otherwise. The Bennett name stands for excellence, and that will carry us through these temporary setbacks. Sophia turned off the television, remembering his words from that terrible night. You're a burden, Sophia. I need someone at my level, not a waitress with dreams bigger than her capability. She smiled slightly, the memory no longer carrying its sting. Her capability, it seemed, had been vastly underestimated. When a major technology magazine requested an interview the following month, Sophia invited the journalist to observe an evening at home, Alex coding a simple game on his computer while she reviewed development specifications for Innovatech's newest module. He's remarkably advanced for his age, the journalist commented, watching Alex methodically debug his program. He sees patterns naturally, Sophia explained, and he's fearless about trying new approaches when something doesn't work. The resulting article, titled "The Tech Prodigy's Mother," featured a photo of Sophia and Alex at his computer, heads bent together over lines of code. It described Innovatech's meteoric rise and Sophia's unusual approach to balancing motherhood and leadership. The final paragraph noted, "In an industry dominated by cutthroat competition and burnout culture, Martinez has created something revolutionary, a billion-dollar company that doesn't demand the sacrifice of family on the altar of success." That night, as Alex showed her the program he'd completed, Sophia felt a quiet certainty. They had not merely survived Richard's rejection, they had transcended it completely. "This is just the beginning," she told Alex as she tucked him in. "One day, everyone will know our value." Watching her son drift to sleep, Sophia couldn't know that in the coming summer, a chance encounter during a medical conference would change her personal life forever, bringing not just true love, but also the father Alex deserved. while Richard Bennett's empire began its slow but inevitable decline. The summer air hung heavy with promise as Sophia navigated through the crowded exhibition hall of the NYU Medical Center. 8 years had passed since that cold January night when Richard Bennett had cast her out of his life, and in that time she had transformed herself from an abandoned pregnant waitress into the CEO of Innovatech Solutions, now valued at over $300 million. "Ms. Martinez, they're ready for your keynote in 20 minutes, her assistant called, hurrying toward her through the throng of healthcare professionals examining the latest medical technologies. Sophia nodded, adjusting her tailored Armani suit, purchased new, not second-hand, a small luxury she now allowed herself. "I'll just check the presentation setup once more." She made her way toward the main auditorium, mentally reviewing her speech on Innovatech's latest telemedicine platform. At 30 years old, Sophia had become a recognized authority in healthcare technology, her company's systems now implemented in over 80 hospitals nationwide. As she approached the stage entrance, a tall man in surgical scrubs bumped into her, coffee splashing perilously close to her silk blouse. "I'm so sorry," he said, steadying her with a gentle hand on her arm. "Too focused on these notes and not enough on where I was going." Sophia looked up to find herself staring into kind brown eyes set in a face that seemed vaguely familiar. "No harm done," she replied with a smile. "First rule of conference survival, never wear white." "Dr. Jamie Reynolds," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Cardiothoracic surgery. And you're Sophia Martinez. I recognized you from the program. Your keynote is the reason I'm here today." "That's quite a compliment from someone who literally holds hearts in his hands for a living," Sophia replied, shaking his hand. Jamie laughed. "What I do is old-fashioned craftsmanship. What you're doing, revolutionizing how we deliver care, that's the future." Something in his earnest appreciation made Sophia pause. "Would you like to grab a coffee after the presentation? I'd love to hear a surgeon's perspective on our telemedicine platform." "I'd like that very much," Jamie replied. The proposed 15-minute coffee extended into a 2-hour conversation, ranging from medical technology to favorite novels, from the challenges of hospital bureaucracy to the best pizza in New York. Jamie listened intently as Sophia explained her vision for integrated care systems, asking questions that revealed not just intelligence, but genuine curiosity. "I should probably confess something," Jamie said as they finally prepared to leave the hospital cafe. "I researched you before the conference. Your story, building Innovatech while raising your son alone, it's remarkable." Sophia felt a familiar wariness rise. Her success had recently attracted a certain type of man, those who saw her wealth and position as desirable, her single motherhood as a challenge to overcome. "I have an 8-year-old son," she said carefully. "Alex is my priority. We're a package deal." Jamie's smile remained unchanged. "I'd expect nothing less." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of a woman with a radiant smile. "My wife, Sarah. She died 3 years ago. Aneurysm. Completely unexpected." He swiped to another photo of himself with a young girl. "Our daughter Emma is 6 now, so I understand priorities." The simple honesty of his grief and his understanding shifted something in Sophia. Their first official date came a week later, dinner at a quiet restaurant where they talked until the staff began stacking chairs around them. "Alex asks about his father sometimes," Sophia admitted over dessert. "It's getting harder to answer as he gets older." "What do you tell him?" Jamie asked, no judgment in his voice. "The truth, in age-appropriate doses. That his biological father wasn't ready to be a parent, that it wasn't about Alex, but about his own choices." Jamie nodded thoughtfully. "Kids are resilient, but they need honesty. Emma still talks to Sarah's photo every night." He hesitated. "Does he know, Alex's father, that he has a son?" The question hung between them, heavier than it might have seemed to an outsider. "He knows," Sophia said quietly. "He made it very clear he wanted no part of us. His exact words were that, 'A child of his with my blood isn't worth even his surname.'" Jamie's expression darkened. Alex is extraordinary. Anyone who couldn't see that must be the biggest fool in the world. Their relationship developed with the careful consideration of two people who understood loss and responsibility. When Alex and Emma finally met at a children's science museum on a bright Saturday morning, their connection was immediate. Alex showing Emma how the electricity exhibit worked, Emma introducing him to her collection of dinosaur facts. On their fourth date, Jamie invited Sophia to observe one of his surgeries, a valve replacement on a teenager born with a congenital defect. From the observation gallery, she watched his hands move with precise, measured confidence, his focus absolute as he repaired the young heart beneath his fingers. Afterward, still in his scrubs, Jamie found her waiting outside the OR. "What did you think?" "I think you have the steadiest hands I've ever seen," she replied honestly, "and the greatest capacity for care." That evening, while browsing news on her tablet, Sophia came across a business article about Richard Bennett's latest setback. A luxury resort in Singapore closed after just 6 months due to insurmountable operational challenges. The Bennett Hotel's stock had dropped 12% following the announcement. She set aside the tablet, surprised by her own indifference. Once, such news might have brought vindication or even satisfaction. Now, Richard Bennett seemed increasingly irrelevant to her story, a footnote rather than a chapter. By contrast, Jamie's presence in her life felt like an unexpected gift. He understood her drive, respected her accomplishments, and most importantly, connected with Alex in a way that filled a space Sophia hadn't fully acknowledged was empty. The first time Alex called Jamie Dad happened spontaneously at a Yankees game, 3 months into their relationship. A home run sent the crowd to their feet, and in his excitement, Alex tugged at Jamie's sleeve. "Dad, did you see that hit?" The word hung in the air for a moment. Jamie's eyes met Sophia's over Alex's head, asking a silent question. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, and Jamie wrapped an arm around Alex's shoulders. "Sure did, buddy. That ball must have gone 400 feet. Later that night, after Alex was asleep, Sophia found Jamie on the balcony of her New York apartment, looking out at the city lights. "About what Alex said at the game," she began. "I would never presume to replace his biological father," Jamie said quickly. "If it made you uncomfortable." "It didn't," Sophia interrupted. "It felt right. You've been more of a father to him in 3 months than Richard ever was or wanted to be." 6 months into their relationship, they attended a charity gala for pediatric cardiac research. Sophia wore a midnight blue gown that complemented her olive skin, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon. As they entered the ballroom, heads turned, not just because of her growing recognition in the business world, but because of the palpable connection between her and Jamie. During the evening, Sophia was called to the stage to accept an award for Innovatech's contributions to children's healthcare technology. From the podium, she caught sight of Jamie and Alex, who had insisted on attending in his first tuxedo, in the front row, their identical expressions of pride warming her heart. "Technology alone cannot heal," she said in her acceptance speech. "It requires the human touch, the doctors, nurses, and caregivers who use these tools with compassion and skill. My company builds systems, but it's people like Dr. Reynolds who transform those systems into saved lives." After the applause died down and she returned to their table, Alex leaned over. "You were awesome, Mom. All those important people clapping for you." Jamie squeezed her hand under the table. "He's right. You were incredible." 3 weeks later, on a crisp fall afternoon, they took Alex and Emma to Central Park. While the children fed ducks at the pond, Jamie taught Alex the finer points of kite flying, his patience never wavering as the boy struggled with the string. Sophia watched from a park bench, a contentment she had never expected settling over her. "He's a natural with Alex," Elena commented, having joined them for the outing. She had watched Sophia's life unfold from the beginning, from the hospital delivery room to the boardroom, and remained her closest confidant. "And you seem happy. Really happy." "I am," Sophia admitted. It's strange. I spent so long focusing on proving myself, on building something meaningful for Alex, that I never considered there might be room for this kind of partnership. The headlines about Bennett Hotels continued to worsen throughout the fall. A series of management missteps and failed investments had left the once prestigious chain vulnerable. Business journals that had once featured Richard's bold expansion plans now analyzed his strategic errors, with one particularly damning article titled, "The Bennett Decline: How Hubris Dismantled a Hotel Empire." On Christmas Eve, after the children had finally fallen asleep in anticipation of morning surprises, Jamie and Sophia sat before the fireplace in her apartment, the lights from the Christmas tree casting a warm glow across the room. "I have something for you," Jamie said, reaching into his pocket. "I was going to wait until tomorrow, but—" He knelt before her, opening a small velvet box to reveal a platinum ring with a single perfect diamond. "Sophia Martinez, you and Alex have brought light back into my life when I thought it was gone forever. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears filled Sophia's eyes as Alex appeared in the hallway doorway, still in his pajamas, holding a small box of his own. "Can I give her mine too?" he asked Jamie. Jamie nodded, and Alex solemnly approached, presenting Sophia with a clumsily wrapped package. Inside was a handmade ring holder he'd crafted in his school art class, painted blue and silver, Innovatech's colors. "So you can keep your ring safe when you're working," he explained. Then, with childish directness, "Does this mean Jamie will be my real dad now?" Sophia gathered both of them into her arms, her heart so full it felt impossible to contain. "Yes to both of you," she whispered. "Yes to everything." In January, as the engagement announcement appeared in the New York Times social pages, Sophia approved the plans for Innovatech's new headquarters building in Manhattan, a sleek tower that would house their expanded operations, including the new telemedicine division Jamie had helped conceptualize. Standing in the empty lot where the building would rise, Sophia showed Jamie and Alex the architectural renderings on her tablet. 22 floors of innovation, she explained, and a childcare center on the second floor so employees can be close to their kids during the workday. "It's perfect," Jamie said, his arm around her shoulders as Alex examined the 3D model with intense focus. "It's home," Sophia replied, leaning into his embrace. "For all of us." As Sophia drifted to sleep in Jamie's arms that night, the engagement ring catching the moonlight from the bedroom window, she had no idea that her moment of greatest personal happiness would coincide with the beginning of the total collapse of the Bennett Empire, and that in just 2 years, her path would cross with Richard's again in the most unexpected and explosive way possible. Sophia's fingertips traced the glossy Forbes magazine cover bearing her image, still surreal despite having been on her coffee table for weeks. The headline, "The Health Revolution: How an Immigrant Transformed American Medical Technology," captured in a few words the journey that had defined the past 12 years of her life. "Are you admiring yourself again?" Jamie teased, entering their spacious Manhattan penthouse kitchen with 2 steaming coffee mugs. His surgical scrubs had been exchanged for comfortable weekend clothes, his dark hair still damp from the shower. "Just reminding myself it's real," Sophia replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. At 37, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had built something substantial from nothing. The girl who once trembled before Richard Bennett had been replaced by a woman whose company, Innovatech Solutions, was valued at $2.7 billion. From the hallway came the sound of rapid footsteps. Alex, now 12, burst into the kitchen with the boundless energy of youth, his tablet clutched in one hand. "Mom, I fixed that bug in the medication reminder app," he announced triumphantly. "The notification system was getting stuck in a loop because I didn't clear the cache properly." Sophia smiled, ruffling her son's dark hair. Though he had inherited Richard's striking blue eyes, everything else about Alex, his quick intelligence, his determination, his compassion, reflected the values she had worked so hard to instill. "Show me after breakfast," she said. "I think the development team might want to incorporate your fix in the next update." The morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating their Sunday ritual: pancakes made by Jamie, fresh fruit arranged by Alex, coffee brewed to perfection by Sophia. This carefully constructed family life felt like a triumph greater than any business success. "Dad, can we go to the Science Museum after breakfast?" Alex asked, turning to Jamie with the easy familiarity that had developed in the 3 years since their marriage. "They have a new exhibit on artificial intelligence in medicine." "Sounds perfect," Jamie replied, exchanging a warm glance with Sophia over Alex's head. Later that week, Sophia stood before the Innovatech board of directors, commanding the attention of 12 seasoned executives with the quiet authority that had become her trademark. "Our telemedicine platform has exceeded projections by 22% in the third quarter," she explained, navigating through data visualizations projected on the wall behind her. "The pandemic accelerated adoption, but our retention statistics show this isn't a temporary shift. It's a fundamental change in care delivery." The board members, once skeptical of the young Latina entrepreneur, now leaned forward attentively as she outlined her vision for the company's next expansion phase. "Questions?" Sophia asked, concluding her presentation. "Just one," said Marcus Chen, their newest board member. "With these growth trajectories, have you considered taking the company public? The valuation would likely exceed $4 billion. Sophia smiled. "We've had preliminary discussions with underwriters, but Innovatech's mission is long-term transformation of healthcare delivery, not short-term stock appreciation. When we do go public, it will be on terms that preserve that mission." As the meeting adjourned, Sophia checked her phone to find a message from Alex's school. His mathematics team had just won the national competition. His algorithm for optimizing emergency room triage processes had impressed judges from MIT. Pride swelled in her chest as she texted back congratulations. At 12, Alex had already published a peer-reviewed paper on computational approaches to medical resource allocation, an achievement that reflected both his natural brilliance and the environment of intellectual curiosity she and Jamie had fostered. That evening, Sophia and Jamie attended the awards ceremony, watching from the front row as Alex accepted the trophy with characteristic humility, thanking his teachers and teammates before acknowledging his parents. "And especially my mom, who showed me that technology should always serve human needs, never the other way around." In the audience, Jamie squeezed Sophia's hand as tears pricked her eyes. The contrast between this moment and those early days, rocking infant Alex in a tiny apartment while coding through the night, seemed almost impossible to reconcile. Later that week, while reviewing acquisition targets with her executive team, Sophia's attention was caught by a news alert on her tablet. "Bennett Hotels continues downward spiral. Chicago flagship property at risk." She paused mid-sentence, momentarily transported to that January night 12 years ago when Richard Bennett had thrust a check at her and ordered her to disappear. The memory, once razor-sharp, had dulled with time and success. "Sophia, should we proceed with the Johnson Medical Systems evaluation?" her CFO asked, noticing her distraction. "Yes, sorry," she refocused, pushing thoughts of Richard aside. "Their patient monitoring technology complements our platform perfectly." That night, curiosity led her to research the current state of Bennett Hotels. The story that emerged was one of spectacular mismanagement. Richard's impulsive expansion decisions, lavish personal spending, and alienation of key leadership had decimated the once prestigious chain. Only the original Chicago hotel remained under Bennett control, and even that was heavily leveraged. "Still reading about the Bennett collapse?" Jamie asked, joining her in bed. "It's strange," Sophia admitted. "For so long, proving him wrong was this driving force beneath everything I built. Now it just feels irrelevant." "Because it is," Jamie said simply. "You built Innovatech for yourself and Alex, not as a response to him. That's why it succeeded." In October, Alex came home from school vibrating with excitement. "Mom, I got the letter from Harvard." Sophia took the envelope with trembling fingers. Alex, at 12, had completed the advanced placement courses at his prestigious prep school and had applied for early admission to Harvard's special program for exceptionally gifted students. They opened it together, Jamie hovering nearby. "Dear Mr. Martinez Reynolds," Sophia read aloud, her voice catching, "we are pleased to inform you of your acceptance to Harvard University's Accelerated Mathematics program, commencing next fall." Alex whooped, jumping up and down. "I'm going to be the youngest in the program. The advisor said I might even set a record." As they celebrated that night, ordering from Alex's favorite restaurant and calling grandparents with the news, Sophia marveled at the journey. Her son, whom Richard had dismissed as not worth his name, was now heading to the institution that had educated generations of Bennetts, but on his own extraordinary merit. "A toast," Jamie proposed, raising his glass, "to Alex, whose brilliance is matched only by his kind heart." "And to us," Alex added, raising his soda, "the best family ever assembled." The holidays brought a whirlwind of activity. Innovatech's annual charity gala, which raised $12 million for children's hospitals, Christmas in their new weekend home in Connecticut, and preparations for Elena Johnson's wedding in January. Elena, once Sophia's first employee and now Innovatech's respected CFO, had finally found love with Marcus Chen, the board member who had joined the previous year. "I can't believe you're going to be my matron of honor," Elena laughed during their final dress fitting. "Remember when we used to work in that closet-sized office with baby Alex napping under the desk? And now we're planning your wedding at the Four Seasons," Sophia smiled, adjusting the elegant blue gown that complemented her olive skin perfectly. As they left the boutique, Elena hesitated. "There's something I should mention about the guest list. Marcus went to Yale with a cousin of Richard Bennett. Apparently some of their mutual friends might be attending. I just wanted you to know—" Sophia waved away her concern. "It's been 12 years, Elena. Richard Bennett is ancient history. Even if by some astronomical coincidence he attended, he's completely irrelevant to my life now." The week before the wedding, Sophia stood in her office overlooking Manhattan, watching a live business news report on her wall screen. The reporter stood outside the Bennett Grand Chicago, the last remaining hotel in what had once been a global luxury chain. Sources confirmed that Bennett Hotels is in talks with potential buyers for its flagship property, marking the final chapter in what analysts have called one of hospitality's most dramatic collapses. Richard Bennett, once hailed as a visionary leader, has refused comment on the potential sale. The camera briefly showed Richard exiting the hotel, ignoring reporters' questions. Sophia was struck by how much he had aged, his once confident stride now harried, his designer suit hanging slightly loose on his frame, suggesting recent weight loss. "Ms. Martinez Reynolds?" her assistant Vanessa interrupted. "The Fortune reporter is here for your exclusive interview before the ceremony, and the Wall Street Journal confirmed your presence on tomorrow's panel." Sophia nodded, discreetly checking notifications on her smartphone. Innovatech had just finalized a $500 million contract with the federal government to implement their system in rural hospitals nationwide. The company's stock had jumped 12% that morning alone. "And one more thing," Vanessa added as they entered the elevator. "The last acquisition was finalized an hour ago. The Bennett Grand Chicago now officially belongs to our investment portfolio." A subtle smile passed over Sophia's lips. The acquisition hadn't been planned as revenge, it was simply good business. The Bennett Grand would be repurposed as temporary residences for single mothers in crisis, funded by the charitable foundation she had established 3 years earlier. "Perfect timing," Sophia murmured. "Let's make the announcement after Elena's wedding." "Mom!" Alex called, approaching down the corridor as they exited the elevator. His teenage frame had begun to stretch toward his adult height, though his features still carried the softness of youth. "Jamie's looking for you." Something about the maid of honor speech. Sophia smiled, adjusting her son's tie. At 14, he attracted attention not just for his intellectual achievements, but also for his striking resemblance to the man whose DNA he carried, but whose values he had been spared. "How do I look?" she asked, turning slightly in her elegant blue navy dress. "Perfect, as always," Alex replied with a grin. "Ready to shine at Aunt Elena's wedding?" As they walked toward the grand ballroom, Sophia was completely unaware that on the groom's guest list, a particular name was about to bring her past crashing back into her carefully constructed present. While Sophia walked confidently toward the ceremony, arm in arm with her son, she had no idea that in less than 24 hours, she would be face to face with the man who had dismissed her as insignificant, and that the look on his face when he finally understood who she had become would be worth every tear she had shed 12 years ago. The Four Seasons Grand Ballroom gleamed under the subtle glow of crystal chandeliers, white orchid arrangements creating elegant focal points throughout the space. Richard Bennett nursed his third scotch at the corner of the bar, observing the gathering of New York's elite with practiced disinterest. At 46, his once commanding presence had diminished. His designer suit, though still expensive, hung slightly loose on his frame, and fine lines had settled permanently around his eyes, etching a map of stress and disappointment. "Another, sir?" The bartender gestured toward his empty glass. Richard nodded, scanning the room. He hardly knew anyone here. His social circle had contracted along with his financial fortunes. His presence was merely a courtesy to Marcus Chen, a former Yale classmate who had inexplicably invited him despite their tenuous connection in recent years. The side doors opened, and the wedding coordinator gestured for guests to take their seats as the ceremony was about to begin. Richard remained at the bar, preferring to observe from a distance. The string quartet began playing Pachelbel's Canon, signaling the start of the processional. He raised the fresh scotch to his lips just as the maid of honor entered through the side doors, and in that moment, time stopped. The crystal tumbler froze mid-air as Richard's body went rigid with shock. Walking gracefully down the aisle in a tailored blue gown was a ghost from his past, yet not a ghost at all, but a woman in her prime, radiating confidence and success. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon, diamonds glittering at her ears and throat, her olive skin luminous under the chandeliers. Sophia Martinez. Richard's mind raced, connecting fragmented memories with the sophisticated woman before him, the waitress he'd once dismissed, the pregnant girl he'd paid to disappear, the same woman whose face had graced the cover of Forbes just months ago. A connection his brain had somehow failed to make until this very moment. As Sophia took her place at the altar, her eyes swept across the room in a casual survey of the guests. For a fraction of a second, her gaze passed over Richard, then returned, a slight contraction of her eyebrows indicating she was trying to place a vaguely familiar face. Recognition dawned in her eyes. There was no shock, no distress, only a brief flicker of something unreadable, followed by what appeared to be a contained smile before she smoothly redirected her attention to the bride entering the room. The ceremony proceeded in a blur for Richard. He couldn't tear his eyes from Sophia, cataloging the transformation. The nervous young woman who had once served him coffee was now Sophia Martinez Reynolds, CEO of Innovatech Solutions, a company worth billions. The same company whose innovative medical systems were currently being installed in what remained of his hotel chain, a bitter irony he'd been unaware of until this moment. When the ceremony concluded and guests moved to the reception area, Richard abandoned his position at the bar, weaving through clusters of elegant attendees with single-minded purpose. He needed to see her up close, to confirm that this polished executive was indeed the same woman he had so callously discarded. Across the room, he watched as a distinguished man in his late 40s, the renowned cardiac surgeon Jamie Reynolds, Richard's mind supplied from some half-remembered society page, placed a gentle kiss on Sophia's forehead. The gesture was casual but intimate, speaking of deep connection rather than public performance. And then, like a physical blow, Richard saw the boy. He appeared to be in his early teens, tall for his age, with a confident posture that bespoke privilege and security. He approached Sophia and Dr. Reynolds, his back to Richard as he asked something. But when he turned slightly to scan the dessert table, Richard felt the air leave his lungs. Those eyes. Bennett blue, the distinctive shade that had marked his family for generations. "Mom, can I get more of those canapés?" the boy asked, leaning toward Sophia with easy familiarity. "Sure, Alex, but don't forget we need to be on the stage in 20 minutes for the toast," she responded, affectionately adjusting his suit jacket. Alex, his son, a son he had rejected before birth. Richard stumbled back to the bar, ordering another scotch which he drank in a single swallow. The alcohol did nothing to calm the storm of realizations crashing through his mind. The timing aligned perfectly. The boy would be about 14 now, the right age to be conceived during those months he had spent with Sophia. When the master of ceremonies announced the toast from the wedding party, Richard watched, paralyzed, as Sophia ascended the small stage. She moved with natural grace, taking her place at the microphone with the ease of someone accustomed to addressing crowds. "Elena and I started together when Innovatech was just an idea in a tiny office," she began, smiling warmly at the bride. "Today, our company employs over 3,000 people, and our systems save lives daily in 430 hospitals across the country. It's proof that with vision and hard work, any dream is possible." Applause echoed through the ballroom. Richard felt bile rising in his throat. The waitress with dreams bigger than her capability now commanded a company worth 5 times what the Bennett hotels had been at their peak. Her words about dreams and possibilities twisted in his gut, a perverse reflection of his dismissal years ago. As Sophia descended from the stage, Richard moved with desperate urgency, fueled by alcohol and mounting panic. He intercepted her before she could rejoin her family, his fingers closing around her arm. "Sophia," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion, "we need to talk." She looked pointedly at his hand on her arm, then met his gaze with glacial calm. "Richard Bennett, what a surprise. That boy, Alex, he's my son, isn't he?" Richard whispered, unable to modulate his voice as it trembled with urgency. The smile that spread across Sophia's face never reached her eyes. With a smooth movement, she removed his hand from her arm and replied loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "This is Alex Martinez Reynolds, mathematical prodigy accepted to Harvard at 14, who grew up loved by a real father, while you were nothing more than a DNA donor who considered us insufficient." Richard paled, glancing nervously at the curious faces turning toward their conversation. "Can we talk privately? I have rights, you know." Sophia's laugh was light, almost musical, though her eyes remained cold. "Rights? The insignificant waitress you discarded now employs 3,000 people, has saved thousands of lives with accessible medical technology, and is the principal donor to the foundation that just purchased your last failing hotel in Chicago. Rights are for those who accept responsibilities, not for cowards." Silence spread through the group of guests surrounding them, all suddenly very interested in their exchange. Richard felt cold sweat trickling down his back. "You can't prevent me from knowing my son," he insisted, his voice breaking. "Who is this guy, Mom?" Alex appeared at Sophia's side, curious but slightly protective. Richard looked at his son with desperate hunger. "Alex, I'm nobody important," Sophia interrupted firmly. "Just someone I knew a long time ago." "You can't do this!" Richard raised his voice, drawing more attention. "He's a Bennett. He should know his heritage, his family." It was at this moment that Jamie Reynolds approached, placing a protective arm around Sophia's shoulders. "Is there a problem here, darling?" "Mr. Bennett was just leaving," Sophia replied calmly. "Bennett?" Alex frowned. "Like the hotels that went bankrupt? We studied that in business management class as a case of mismanagement. Richard felt the blow like a knife to his gut. His legacy, reduced to a cautionary tale for students. "I can offer you so much," he said desperately to Alex. "I have connections. I can open doors." "The only one who needs doors opened here is you, Bennett," Jamie interjected, making a subtle gesture toward the security personnel. "My son already has everything he needs. Now I suggest you leave before this becomes even more embarrassing for you." "Your son?" Richard laughed bitterly. "He has my blood." "And my love, my guidance, and my surname," Jamie responded with quiet dignity. "What exactly have you contributed to his life in the past 14 years? As security approached, Richard saw the pitying and contemptuous looks from the guests around them, many of them business leaders who had once respected him. His humiliation was complete. "This isn't over," he threatened weakly as the guards flanked him. Sophia merely smiled, that same tranquil smile he now recognized as the expression of someone who had won long ago. As he was escorted toward the exit, Richard glanced back one last time. Sophia had already turned away, Jamie's arm around her waist, Alex between them, a family unit, complete and content without him. The boy who carried his genes, but not his values. The woman who had risen from the ashes of his rejection to eclipse him in every conceivable way. Outside in the cold January air, Richard Bennett stood alone on the sidewalk, the sounds of celebration continuing behind the hotel's revolving doors. 14 years ago, he had thrust a check at a pregnant Sophia and told her to disappear. Now, in a twist of fate so poetic it seemed almost scripted, she had built an empire while his crumbled to dust. For the first time, the full magnitude of what he had lost crashed over him. Not just a son, but the partnership of an extraordinary woman whose vision could have saved his family's legacy rather than overshadowing it. The realization was more intoxicating than the scotch burning in his veins. As the car service pulled up to take him back to his mediocre hotel, Richard Bennett finally understood the true cost of his arrogance. A cost measured not in dollars, but in the family, legacy, and respect he had carelessly discarded on that winter night so many years ago. While the security guards escorted Richard from the reception, his humiliation evident in every line of his body, he had no idea that this public confrontation would go viral by morning, and that Sophia had one final act of poetic justice reserved for the man who once said a child of his with her blood wasn't worth even his surname. Richard Bennett awoke to the insistent buzzing of his phone on the nightstand of his modest hotel room. His head throbbed with a vicious hangover, mouth dry as sandpaper. Squinting at the screen, he saw 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and dozens of email notifications. The most recent text, from his publicist, simply read, "Call me now, it's everywhere." With shaking hands, he opened his news app. His stomach plummeted as he saw the headline, "Hotel Air Bennett confronts billionaire tech CEO at elite wedding." Below it, a thumbnail showed his face contorted with anger as security guards flanked him. Someone had recorded the entire exchange. The 30-second clip had already accumulated millions of views, with captions like, "Fallen hotel magnate confronts the woman who built empire after he rejected her and their child," and Innovatech CEO reveals, "Ex-boyfriend dismissed son now accepted to Harvard." Richard stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face as his phone continued its relentless buzzing. His attorney, his publicist, his financial advisor, even his most recent ex-wife demanding to know what this story is about a secret son. His reflection in the mirror looked haggard, the strain of recent years etched into every line. The man staring back bore little resemblance to the confident heir who had once casually discarded a pregnant Sophia Martinez. "What have I done?" he whispered to his reflection. Over the next 3 days, Richard watched helplessly as his humiliation played out across social media and news outlets. Each headline seemed more damaging than the last. Bennett heir confronts biological son after 14 years of absence. And tech visionary Martinez Reynolds built billion-dollar empire while ex-partner lost family fortune. Desperate for some form of contact, Richard bombarded Innovatech with messages, calling every extension he could find, emailing every address on their website. His efforts yielded only a single terse response from Sophia's assistant. Mrs. Martinez Reynolds has no availability in her schedule to meet with you. On the fourth day after the wedding, sitting alone in the hotel bar nursing a mineral water, he couldn't stomach alcohol anymore, Richard received a text message from an unknown number. Lobby, 20 minutes. A car will take you to meet someone who can explain your situation. The sleek black SUV transported him through Manhattan's streets to a nondescript office building. In a minimalist conference room, a woman in a tailored suit awaited him. "Mr. Bennett," she extended her hand coolly. "I'm Victoria Winters, lead counsel for Mrs. Martinez Reynolds." "Where is Sophia?" Richard asked, looking around as if expecting her to materialize. "My client has no interest in meeting with you," Victoria replied, placing a thick manila envelope on the table. "This should clarify your position." Inside was a meticulously assembled dossier. The first document was a letter on heavy legal stationery from one of New York's most powerful law firms. In precise language, it explained that any attempt to contact Alexander Martinez Reynolds would be met with immediate legal action. The letter detailed Richard's explicit rejection of paternity 14 years earlier, including a transcript of his exact words from that January night. Phrases like, "A child of mine with your blood isn't worth even my surname," and "You're a burden, Sophia," rendered in cold black type. "How is this possible?" Richard whispered, horrified at seeing his cruelest moments documented so precisely. "She recorded our conversation?" "Mrs. Martinez Reynolds has an eidetic memory," Victoria stated flatly. "But more relevantly, you spoke those words to her again, almost verbatim, when you encountered her 3 months later at Cipriani and demanded she stay away from your social circles. That second conversation was overheard by multiple witnesses whose affidavits are included." Richard vaguely recalled the incident, running into Sophia, visibly pregnant, while he was dining with business associates. He had pulled her aside, angry that she hadn't disappeared as instructed. The dossier contained more, bank records showing the $10,000 he had given Sophia had been deposited into an untouched account. The money had remained there, accumulating minimal interest, never spent. "She didn't use the money," Richard murmured, stunned. "Not a penny," Victoria confirmed. "Mrs. Martinez Reynolds kept it as evidence of your attempt to buy her silence and absence." The pages that followed detailed Alex's life, his perfect academic record, awards from international mathematics competitions, scientific papers published before his 13th birthday, his early acceptance to Harvard with a full scholarship. The boy had achieved more by 14 than many accomplished adults did in a lifetime. The final section was the most devastating, a comparative financial report. On one side, Richard Bennett's declining fortune and the collapse of Bennett Hotels over 14 years. On the other, the meteoric rise of Innovatech Solutions and Sophia's personal fortune, now exceeding $800 million. Richard closed the folder, his hands trembling. "What does she want from me?" "Nothing," Victoria replied simply. "This meeting is a courtesy to inform you that any further attempts to contact her son will result in legal action. When Alexander turns 18, Mrs. Martinez Reynolds will share the complete truth with him. If he chooses to contact you then, that will be his decision alone. And until then? Until then, you will maintain your distance." Victoria stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "The car will take you back to your hotel." For the next week, Richard became a shadow following Sophia's movements around New York. He discovered where she lived, an elegant penthouse overlooking Central Park. He waited outside Innovatech's gleaming headquarters, hoping to glimpse her entering or leaving. He even found Alex's prestigious private school, watching from across the street as teenagers streamed out at day's end. His efforts were pathetic and fruitless. Security personnel at both her home and office clearly had his description. Each time he lingered too long, they approached with quiet warnings. The packages he sent, expensive gifts for Alex, were all returned unopened. Finally, 2 weeks after the wedding, his persistent messages to every Innovatech contact yielded an unexpected response. Sophia would meet him for exactly 15 minutes at a cafe near her office. Richard arrived 30 minutes early, his heart racing with nervous anticipation. He rehearsed what he would say, how he would explain himself, what promises he would make. When Sophia entered, accompanied by a discreet security guard who positioned himself at a nearby table, Richard almost didn't recognize her. In the business environment, wearing an impeccably tailored executive suit, she exuded an authority that made him shrink in his seat. This was not the young woman he had dismissed. This was Sophia Martinez Reynolds, a force of nature who had built an empire while he lost his. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice unsteady. 15 minutes, Richard," she replied, checking her luxury watch. "What do you want?" "I want to know my son. I want to be part of his life. I may have made a terrible mistake, but I have the right to—" "No," Sophia interrupted, her voice calm but unyielding. "You don't have rights. You abdicated them when you said a child of yours with my blood wasn't worth even your surname. I was scared. I was young and stupid. And Alex should pay for that now? Be disturbed at his most important moment, when he's about to start at Harvard? Have his world turned upside down because you suddenly feel lonely and regretful?" Richard swallowed hard. "I can make it up to him. I can make it up to both of you." Sophia smiled, genuinely amused. "With what exactly? Your last hotel was just sold to my foundation. Your personal fortune wouldn't cover Innovatech's operating costs for a day. Alex has a trust fund that would ensure comfort for him for the next 100 years, even if he never worked a day in his life, which he certainly will, as he inherited my work ethic, not your expectation of privilege." Her words landed like physical blows. The reality of his irrelevance in their lives was overwhelming. "What can I do then?" he asked, defeated. Sophia studied him for a moment, her eyes no longer cold, but simply indifferent. "Nothing. There's nothing you can do for us. We don't need you, Richard. We never did." She stood, adjusting her Hermes bag. "If you truly care about Alex, the only thing you can do for him is leave him in peace. He has a father who loves him, a brilliant future ahead, and a happy, stable life. Don't disturb that with your belated regret." "And if he wants to know me someday?" Richard asked, a final flicker of hope in his voice. "When he turns 18, I'll tell him the whole truth. If he wants to find you, that will be his choice. Until then, keep your distance." With that, she turned to leave, but paused for a final glance at Richard. "You know what's ironic? If you had stayed by my side, you would have been co-founder of Innovatech. Those ideas I shared with you at dinners, that you called unrealistic dreams of an ambitious waitress, they built my empire. You didn't just lose a son, Richard. You lost the future." As he watched Sophia walk away with the confident stride of someone who never looks back, Richard Bennett finally understood the magnitude of his error. There was no revenge in her actions, only the silent justice of time and choices. Sophia hadn't built her empire to prove something to him, but for herself and her son. The fact that it left him in the shadows was merely a natural consequence, not the objective. That night, back in his hotel room, Richard opened his laptop and typed Sophia's name into Google. Among dozens of articles about her business achievements, he found a recent interview where she discussed overcoming obstacles. "The greatest gift I ever received was when someone told me I wasn't enough," she said in the interview. "Because in that moment, I decided I wouldn't just be enough. I would be exceptional. And I taught my son that his worth never depends on the validation of those who failed to see it." Richard closed the laptop, staring at the blank wall. In a parallel universe, that could have been his empire too. That brilliant young man could have called him father with pride, not indifference. That extraordinary woman could have been by his side, not light years ahead of him. Meanwhile, a few miles away in the apartment overlooking Central Park, Sophia helped Alex with his Harvard preparations. Jamie brought hot chocolate for the three of them as they enthusiastically discussed plans to visit the campus the following weekend. "I'm nervous but excited," Alex admitted. "You'll shine there," Jamie assured him, affectionately ruffling his son's hair. "As you've always shown in everything," Sophia added, kissing her son's forehead. That night, after Alex had gone to bed, Sophia stood on the balcony contemplating the city lights. Jamie embraced her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" After everything that happened at the wedding, Sophia smiled, interlacing her fingers with his. "I am. Actually, I feel like a cycle has finally closed, like the last ghost from the past has been exorcised." "He'll try again," Jamie observed. "Probably, but it doesn't matter. What he doesn't understand is that I didn't build all this to prove something to him. I built it to prove something to myself. And the greatest gift Richard Bennett gave me was showing exactly the kind of person I never wanted to be." If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.